When you build a character, you have essentially two options: direct and indirect characterization. That's even how they teach it in schools. Direct characterization is quite a bit easier, so it gets overused a lot. But to its credit, it is faster. It's almost never ideal, you should show, don't tell. But if speed is of the essence, there's not a lot of ways to paint somebody as smart faster than just saying he is smart. Indirect characterization is better in most other ways. Don't give someone a conclusion. Give them the data they need to conclude it themselves. Don't tell us that somebody is smart. Show us something they did which takes intelligence. Denji is presented to us as being quite simple. He dreams of basic things, like food and women, and he doesn't have particularly high aspirations. Problem is, most of that comes to us from the direct characterization, and his actions don't really support that. So much so that when it comes to what he actually does, you could replace him with Deku from My Hero Academia, and most of the story remains the same. Now, there's nothing wrong with using a character like Deku, but he is almost the opposite of who Denji is presented as. A weird, morally questionable character with selfish goals and no education. So it's quite striking to see that replacing him with one of the most cookie-cutter, lawful good bookom of a character changes almost nothing about the story. Let's do a rundown of what choices Denji actually makes. The story starts with Denji becoming an orphan and inheriting from his father a huge debt to the Yakuza. Quickly after this, he conveniently runs into a wounded demon. He chooses to offer him some blood to revive him. Would Deku have done the same? Probably, yeah. He's a softie like that. Next, he runs into an actually dangerous demon and he fights it by using the chainsaw demon. Would Deku have done the same? Yes. My Hero Aka starts with Deku charging some bad guy in spite of himself not having any superpowers. So if he had a magical chainsaw, he for sure would fight the monster. He then leverages his abilities to work off his debt by fighting monsters and cutting trees. Would Deku have done the same? Probably, yes. There is a chance that Deku might call the police, but he is the sort of scaredy cat that probably won't. Denji does also sell some of his bits, like his eye, and I'm not sure Deku would, but for the story at large, this is really meaningless. The manga starts with him listing what of himself he sold, but it never really comes into play after. He even gets fully restored soon after, so it's mostly there for just shock value, I think. Next, there's the wall encounter with the zombie demon, but no choices are really made here. There is, however, a discussion with the chainsaw demon. It offers a contract where Denji gets its powers because it wants to see his dreams come true. Now, those dreams are wanting food and women. Probably not quite something Deku would dream of, but Deku would still share his dreams with Pochi, those of wanting to be the best superhero and justice of stuff. Would Pochi offer Deku the same deal? I think so. To me, it seems like it's got more to do with Pochi liking Denji for saving it and taking care of it. I don't think the specific dream matters all that much. What it wants is to see him succeed. So even if Denji had other dreams, I think Pochi would still offer the same contract. I think. Then he goes and kills the zombie, runs into Makima, and he's asked to choose between becoming a demon hunter and fucking dying. Man, I sure wonder what Deku would have chose. Partly because few things are worse than dying, but also because demon hunters in this world are the closest thing to superheroes from My Hero Aka. So even without the death threat, Deku would still jump on this opportunity. The next one is a tad weird, because it's actually cut from the anime, and I suspect because of the exact point I'm trying to make here. There's a demon somewhere in the forest, and she sends Denji to hunt it. Alone. Now, you may wonder, why would she send this new guy she's quite unsure of alone into the forest? Well, so the plot can happen, because he goes in, finds a demon and a little girl, and tries to let them get away, since they seem friendly. And that's just not something he could have done if Makima was present. Would Deku let a seemingly friendly demon run away? Yes, most likely. But the thing is, Denji kinda shouldn't. Later on, powers tell him that her cat is held captive by a demon, and she needs to bribe him to make him come along to help, because otherwise he just doesn't care. Why would that same Denji risk so much here? Not only would he be hunted, but Makima promised him food and shelter, so he'd lose what he claims to be his dream. This whole bit was likely cut, partly because it's just tangential to the plot, so it's easily cut out, but also because it's inconsistent. Who they are telling us Denji to be is different from who they are actually showing him to be. It's hard to say why this happened. My guess is the author had a story he wanted to tell and a character he wanted to write, so he threw both in, even though the two aren't compatible. They try to hammer this home later. After he loses some teammates, he realizes he's not sad. Have I lost my humanity along with my heart, he wonders. No! You tried to save that demon. You yelled at people so they wouldn't end up as collaterals. You covered up for power, partly for your gain. But once you got what you wanted, you could have turned her in. Yet you didn't. You didn't cry because you barely knew those people. Same for us, mind you. To any fan of the show still watching, a number of people died in the Snake Woman encounter. How many and who were they? Go ahead. I bet you remember only one. And kinda so did the story. Cause it's only really one that they avenge. But inconsistency is really just one of the problems with how Denji is built up. Denji not caring about the cat until there's something in it for him is quite a good example of how to build a character. It's inconsistent with previous actions, but it is an example of indirect characterization aligning with the direct one. Contrast is your friend. Imagine an average protagonist like Deku and show me all of the ways in which your character is different from that guy. Deku would have agreed to help from the beginning instead of needing to get something out of it. But Denji still does help. It's not necessarily a problem, but it's still less impactful. Someone who was going to do something will never stick with you as well as someone actually doing that something. For any reason, really. When Ned Stark says that he who gives the sentence should swing the sword, and then does it, that sticks with you. More than if the condemned managed to get away. Even if Ned doesn't change his mind, him not getting to actually do it would lessen the impact. Knowing something and feeling something are just different things. Seeing is believing after all. We know Denji was going to refuse and leave the cat in danger, but ends up still saving it, even if for selfish reasons. The information may be the same, but the impact just isn't there. He throws a car at the demon with the driver still inside. He says he doesn't care, but the driver did manage to jump out. So did he really not care? Or did he make it so he has time to jump out? It's this sort of incertitude that you create when you're afraid to commit. If that's intentional, good. If you wanna leave us wondering. But I don't think that's the case here. I think this is here to give Denji an out, maintaining the facade of him being uncaring without running the risk of people hating him for the atrocities he is theoretically willing to commit. Seriously, conveniently, nobody died in the whole Bat Demon arc. So much destruction, but it all turned out fine in the end. How sweet. This is not intentional. This is fear to commit. But there's yet another problem in the cat scene. Death Note is a story where a guy finds a notebook with the ability to kill people and decides to use it to kill criminals in order to create a new world which he would be the god of. With the story so ingrained in the public psyche, perhaps more people would consider doing the same now. But making abstractions of that, this is a rather character-specific action. Few people would ever think of doing it, and even fewer would go through with it, especially to the degree that he does, killing not just bad criminals, but even smaller offenses. With Denji, hey, I'll give you a chainsaw powers, in exchange you go fulfill your dreams. Damn, that's a hard choice. I can sure see many declining. Worse even, Denji is almost always reactionary. With Death Note, Light is presented with a resource. He's given a weapon with endless possibilities and he decides what to do with it. He is a proactive character. Meanwhile, Denji is presented with choices like work for us or die. He's given a two-option decision that's very much weighted towards one side. And he didn't even do something clever like Tyrion finding the secret third option. He just takes the obvious good option. Even with Power's cat, she asks for his help in exchange for some sugar. The proactive way would have been to have him propose the deal instead of Power. In Death Note, Likes takes a first step that is characteristic to him and him alone. You can't easily replace him with anyone else because few people would have acted like him, and his decisions are what tells us who he is. This is a choice impactful to the plot, which is derived from his personality. Who he is matters, because had he been different, the story would have been different. Proactive, impactful, committed. This is how you want your characterization. There are bits where you would need some changes if you swap Denji with Deku, but the plot bits remain the same, mainly because the story pulls the MC along instead of having him move the story. In the hotel arc, Deku would be less eager about the whole kissing thing, but for the events that actually take place, that doesn't change much of anything really. He'd still end up at the eye patch lady's place and refuse her advances. The Snake Woman's attack goes the same as well. He makes no decisions in that part, and attacking the Snake Woman also goes the same. The only questionable part in the whole anime would be the beginning of the training arc. Power and Denji are asked 3 questions, and Deku's answer would be rather different. But my understanding is that he really only cares to see if they are sane or not. Given the type of guy the trainer is, I still make the case that Deku's ideas of justice would be seen as insane by him, so he probably would still train Deku. I am of the school of thought which sees writing as a discovery process. Throw a couple elements into a bucket, mix them up, throw the result on the page and see what happens. At the end of the Dune books, the author mentions how the characters kinda got away from him, referencing in part how a good author will let his characters grow in ways he didn't necessarily plan out. This, however, feels like the opposite, trying to fit a triangle piece into a round hole, and when it doesn't work, hammer it in, instead of just putting it into a square hole where we all know it belongs.